Marrying an alien royal was easy. Surviving the first night trial was the real challenge. The weight of treaties. Captain Elias Ward adjusted his formal diplomatic uniform one final time, the crisp fabric feeling foreign against skin more accustomed to spaceflight suits. Through the crystalline viewport of the Alari ceremonial ship, Earth hung like a blue marble against the star-speckled void. In 3 hours, he would no longer be just another human diplomat. He would be Prince Consort to Princess Thalira of the Alari Dominion, binding 2 civilizations through matrimony. The arrangement had been months in the making. War between Earth and the Alari had raged for 2 brutal years, claiming colonies and fleets on both sides. When the Dominion finally proposed peace through an ancient tradition, royal marriage, the Earth Council had debated for weeks. They needed someone with military experience, diplomatic training, and the psychological fortitude to navigate alien customs. Elias had volunteered, knowing full well he was trading his freedom for humanity's survival. Second thoughts, Captain? Ambassador Reginald Voss emerged from the shadows of the observation deck, his weathered face etched with concern. The older man had served as Earth's primary negotiator throughout the peace talks. None that matter, Elias replied, though his fingers unconsciously traced the small Earth insignia on his collar. The preliminary meetings with Princess Thalira went well enough. She seems intelligent, measured, not what I expected from an alien royal. Voss nodded grimly. The Alari are ancient, Captain. Their civilization spans millennia, and their customs run deeper than we can fathom. What little intelligence we've gathered suggests their royal traditions are complex. The ceremony hall materialized around them as the ship's holographic systems activated. Towering spires of bioluminescent coral stretched toward a domed ceiling that displayed the swirling galaxies of Alari space. Representatives from both species filled floating observation platforms, their faces masks of diplomatic neutrality masking the tension beneath. Princess Thalira entered with fluid grace, her form both hauntingly beautiful and utterly alien. Her skin held the faint luminescence of her people, shifting from pale silver to soft gold depending on the angle of light. Intricate neural patterns pulsed gently along her temples and neck, signs of her enhanced cognitive abilities. Her eyes, large and opalescent, met his with an expression he couldn't quite decipher. The ceremony itself proved surprisingly brief. Elder Cathara, the Dominion's high ritualist, spoke in flowing Alari before switching to accented standard. By the binding of worlds and the joining of souls, may this union bring harmony to the void between stars. Thalira extended her hand, revealing palm tattoos that glowed softly in the chamber's light. When Elias placed his palm against hers, warmth spread up his arm. Not unpleasant, but distinctly alien. It is done, Cathara announced. The Prince Consort of the Dominion is recognized by both worlds. Polite applause echoed through the chamber as dignitaries began filing out. Elias felt a mixture of relief and anticlimax. After months of preparation, the pivotal moment had lasted mere minutes. You seem surprised by the simplicity, Thalira observed, her voice carrying musical undertones that seemed to resonate in his chest. Her standard was flawless, though accented with the precise diction of someone for whom it was a carefully learned language. I expected something more elaborate, Elias admitted. Earth ceremonies can be quite lengthy. The true ceremony begins now, she said, and something in her tone made his relief evaporate. Follow me, Prince Consort. The first night trial awaits. The words hit him like ice water. No one had mentioned any trial. Voss caught his eye from across the chamber, the ambassador's face pale with sudden understanding. As Thalira led him toward a section of the ship he'd never seen, Elias realized the real test wasn't the marriage itself. It was what came after. The corridor ahead pulsed with soft bioluminescent patterns, leading deeper into the ship's mysterious heart. With each step, Earth seemed further away and his new reality became terrifyingly clear. The Chamber of Truth. The bioreactive chamber defied human understanding of architecture. Walls curved and flowed like living tissue, their surface covered in microscopic sensors that seemed to taste the air itself. Soft, phosphorescent veins pulsed through the organic material, creating an aurora of blues and greens that shifted with Elias's heartbeat. The first night trial has been part of Alari tradition for 3,000 years, Princess Thalira explained as they stood at the chamber's threshold. Her luminescent patterns had darkened to deep amber, what Elias was beginning to recognize as a sign of serious concentration. It tests whether a new member of the royal bloodline possesses the strength to lead our people. And if I fail? Elias asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. The marriage is annulled immediately. The treaty becomes void. Our worlds return to war. Her opalescent eyes met his with unwavering intensity. But more than that, I will bear the shame of choosing poorly. My credibility with the Dominion Council will be destroyed. Elder Kythera approached carrying an ornate crystalline device that hummed with contained energy. The chamber reads neural patterns, memories, and emotional responses. It will create scenarios designed to test your limits. You cannot leave until dawn, approximately 8 Earth hours. You may not communicate with anyone outside, and Princess Thalira is forbidden from offering assistance. What exactly will I face? Elias asked. That depends entirely on you, Kythera replied cryptically. The chamber draws from your own mind to create the trials. Your fears, your guilt, your deepest conflicts all become real within these walls. Thalira stepped closer, close enough that he could see the complex patterns of scales along her jawline. I have watched 17 trials in my lifetime. Only 4 candidates succeeded. The chamber shows no mercy to those who lie to themselves. Reassuring, Elias muttered. There is something else, she continued, her voice dropping to barely above. A whisper. I will be watching from the sacred alcove above. I can see everything, but I cannot help you. If you appear to be in mortal danger, I can end the trial, but doing so means automatic failure. Elias looked up at the translucent observation dome above the chamber. He could make out movement behind the bioluminescent barrier, but the details remained obscured. The thought of Thalira watching his every moment of weakness made his stomach clench. Kythera activated the crystalline device, and the chamber door began to seal with organic fluidity. Remember, Prince Consort, the chamber responds to truth. Fighting it will only make the trials worse. Accept what it shows you, and you may find wisdom in the darkness. The door closed with a soft sigh, leaving Elias alone in the pulsing chamber. The walls immediately began to shift, growing darker as the phosphorescent veins dimmed to a barely perceptible glow. The air itself seemed to thicken, carrying unfamiliar scents that triggered primal responses in his brain. Without warning, the floor beneath his feet dissolved. Elias found himself falling through his own memories, watching his past unfold like scattered photographs in a whirlwind. His graduation from Earth Fleet Academy, his first command aboard the UES Defiant, the face of Lieutenant Marcus Chen, his communications officer dying in the attack on Kepler Station, an attack Elias had failed to prevent. The falling stopped abruptly. He stood in the ruins of Kepler Station, watching emergency crews pull bodies from twisted metal. The smell of burning atmosphere and death filled his nostrils. This wasn't just a memory, it was viscerally, horrifyingly real. Captain Ward. Lieutenant Chen's voice came from behind him, but when Elias turned, he saw not his young officer, but a corpse with accusing eyes. Why didn't you save us? I tried, Elias whispered, but his voice carried no conviction. The guilt he'd buried, under years of duty service, crashed over him like a tidal wave. Did you? Or did you hesitate because you were afraid? The corpse took a shambling step forward. How many died because you weren't brave enough to make the hard choice? Above, barely visible through the chamber's strange geometry, Elias caught a glimpse of Thalira's silhouette. She was watching, forbidden to help, as his deepest failures came alive to judge him. The trial had begun, and already he was drowning in the weight of his own conscience. Echoes of command. The ruined station dissolved around Elias, replaced by the bridge of the UES Defiant during the Battle of Proxima Drift. The simulation was perfect, Every control panel, every face of his crew, even the subtle vibration of the ship's engines under combat stress. But this wasn't how the battle had actually unfolded. This was how it could have gone if he'd made different choices. "Enemy vessels detected," announced Lieutenant Commander Zara Okafor, his tactical officer. Her dark skin was beaded with sweat as she worked her console frantically. "Ilari dreadnoughts, Captain. 3 of them, closing fast on the civilian transports." Elias found himself reliving the moment, but with knowledge of how his original decision had played out. In reality, he'd ordered the Defiant to escort the transports to safety while other ships engaged the Ilari fleet. They'd saved 8,000 civilian lives, but the delay had cost them tactical advantage. The battle had dragged on for 6 more hours, claiming hundreds of military lives. "Captain?" Okafor's voice was strained. "Orders?" In the chamber's twisted version of reality, Elias could see both paths laid out before him like branching tributaries of time. Save the civilians and doom his fleet. Save the fleet and watch innocents die. The chamber was forcing him to confront the impossible choices that command demanded. "All ships, attack formation," he heard himself say, choosing the path he'd rejected. In reality, "Ignore the transports, we take out those dreadnoughts now." The tactical display showed the results immediately. Ilari ships, caught off guard by the aggressive human assault, took heavy damage. The battle ended in 40 minutes instead of 6 hours. But on the viewer, he watched civilian ships explode one by one, their escape pods scattered like dying stars. 8,000 lives, Captain," came a new voice. Elias turned to see Admiral Patricia Holloway, his former commanding officer, standing behind him. But her uniform was stained with blood, and her face held the pallor of death. 8,000 people who trusted Earth Fleet to protect them. Was military efficiency worth their lives? "I was trying to end the war faster," Elias protested. "Fewer total casualties." "Whose casualties?" The Phantom Admiral stepped closer. "The ones you could see or the ones you chose not to count?" The bridge dissolved again, this time revealing a negotiation chamber aboard an Ilari vessel. Elias stood across from Princess Thalara during their first formal meeting, weeks before the marriage proposal. But now he could see additional details, subtle body language, barely perceptible pheromone trails that indicated stress, the way her neural patterns flickered when she spoke of her people's losses. "Your species fascinates me, Captain Ward," the Phantom Thalara said, but her voice carried overtones of mockery. "You speak of honor and sacrifice, yet you married me for political convenience. Do you even see me as a person or just another strategic asset?" Elias felt the accusation like a physical blow. "That's not, I mean, I respect you." "Respect?" The Phantom laughed, a sound like breaking crystal. "You know nothing about me. My hopes, my fears, the weight I carry as princess of a warrior people. You see an alien with useful political connections." But as the words hung in the air, Elias realized they weren't entirely true. During their preliminary meetings, he had found himself genuinely curious about Thalira's perspectives. Her insights into interstellar politics were sharp, her concern for her people authentic. She carried leadership like a burden rather than a privilege, something he understood intimately. "You're wrong," he said quietly, and meant it. "I see someone who carries the weight of 2 civilizations on her shoulders. Someone who chose duty over personal desire, just like I did." The Phantom Thalira's expression shifted, surprise flickering across her alien features. "And what do you see when you look deeper?" Above them, barely visible through the chamber's organic ceiling, the real Thalira leaned forward. Her luminescent patterns had shifted to soft silver, what he was learning to recognize as intense attention. "I see someone afraid of failing her. People," Ilias continued, his voice growing stronger. "Someone who understands the loneliness of command. Someone who took a massive risk on an unknown human because she believed peace was worth more than pride." The Phantom began to fade, but not with the harsh dissolution of the previous illusions. This time, the transition felt like acceptance rather than defeat. "Perhaps," came Thalira's voice, though he couldn't tell if it was memory or reality. "There is wisdom in choosing truth over comfort." The chamber pulsed once, and Elias found himself standing in complete darkness, waiting for the next trial to begin. The heart of understanding absolute darkness gave way to soft, golden light that seemed to emanate from everywhere and nowhere. Elias found himself in what appeared to be a vast garden, though no earthly vegetation had ever grown with such alien beauty. Crystalline trees chimed in harmonious frequencies as breezes passed through their faceted leaves. Flowers that seemed constructed of living light swayed on stems of woven starlight. This was peaceful, too peaceful. Beautiful, isn't it? Princess Thalira's voice came from behind him, but when he turned, he saw not his wife, but a vision of her transformed. Her luminescent patterns had brightened to pure gold, and her eyes held depths that seemed to contain entire galaxies. This is Kithara Prime, the heart of my homeworld, the place where I spent my childhood. It's... Elias searched for words. I've never seen anything like it. Of course you haven't. The vision Thalira moved with impossible grace between the crystal trees. Your species thinks in terms of conquest and consumption. You see resources where we see sacred spaces. How can someone who cannot understand beauty lead a people who create it? But this felt different from the previous trials. The accusations carried less venom, more genuine curiosity. The chamber was no longer attacking his failures. It was questioning his capacity for growth. You're right, Elias admitted, settling cross-legged on the soft, luminescent grass. I don't understand your people's connection to this kind of beauty, but I can learn. Can you? The vision knelt beside him, close enough that he could see the intricate neural pathways that pulsed beneath her translucent skin. Learning requires more than intellectual acceptance, Captain. It requires opening yourself to experiences that fundamentally challenge who you are. As if responding to her words, the garden began to change. Elias felt his human senses expanding, perceiving spectrums of light and sound previously invisible to him. The crystal trees weren't just beautiful. They were communicating, sharing information through harmonic resonance. The flower lights weren't decorative. They were part of a vast network of consciousness that connected all living things on the planet. We don't see ourselves as separate from our world, Vision Thalira explained. Every Alari is part of a greater symphony. When you marry into our royal family, you don't just gain political status, you become responsible for maintaining that harmony. The weight of that responsibility settled over Elias like a heavy cloak. He'd understood the political implications of the marriage, but this was something far more profound. He was being asked to become part of something he couldn't fully comprehend. I can't pretend to understand it all, he said honestly, but I can promise to try, to listen when I don't understand, to ask questions instead of making assumptions. And what of your own people? The vision's expression grew more serious. Humans who will see your integration with Alari culture as betrayal, who will question whether you still serve Earth's interests. This was the heart of it, the impossible balance he would need to maintain. Serve Earth's needs while honoring Alari traditions. Remain human while accepting alien perspectives. Lead people who might never fully trust him. I'll face that when it comes, Elias said. Right now, I need to focus on earning the trust of one Alari princess who took an enormous risk on a human she barely knows. The vision Thalira smiled, and for a moment her expression perfectly matched memories of the real princess during their quieter conversations. And how do you plan to do that? By being honest, by keeping my promises, by remembering that she's not just a political ally, she's someone who could have chosen safety and chose partnership instead. The garden began to fade, but the sense of expanded awareness remained. Elias could still perceive the harmonic connections between living things, though muted through his human neural pathways. The chamber had given him a gift, a glimpse of how the Alari experienced reality. Above him, through the chamber's organic ceiling, he saw Thalira's silhouette shift. Her luminescent patterns had brightened to warm gold, similar to those of her vision counterpart. Was she responding to his words, or was the chamber reflecting her actual emotional state? One final test remains. The chamber itself seemed to whisper, its bioluminescent walls pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. the choice that will define all others. The darkness returned, but this time Elias wasn't afraid. He was beginning to understand that the chamber didn't want him to fail. It wanted him to discover who he truly was beneath the layers of duty, guilt, and fear. The final trial was about to begin. The dawn of truth. The final trial manifested not as a grand scenario but as a simple room containing 2 chairs and a table. Across from Elias sat his exact duplicate, not a phantom or vision, but what appeared to be himself from a timeline where he'd made different choices. This other Elias wore the uniform of Earth Fleet Admiral, his chest decorated with medals that told of military victories and political advancement. "You could have had this," the alternate Elias said, gesturing to his insignia. "Full Admiral by age 40, hero of the Alari War. Instead, you chose to become an alien's political ornament." "I chose peace over personal glory," Elias replied, though he felt the familiar sting of second-guessing himself. "Did you? Or did you choose the easy path?" The Admiral leaned forward. "Marriage is comfortable, safe. No more making the hard, tactical decisions that cost lives. No more carrying the weight of command. You can hide behind diplomatic immunity while other people fight the real battles." The accusation hit deeper than Elias expected because it contained a grain of truth. Part of him had been relieved to leave active military service, to step away from decisions where wrong choices meant death. "Maybe," he admitted, "but running from responsibility isn't why I'm here." "Then why are you here?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Why had he really volunteered for this impossible marriage? Political duty? Personal redemption? Simple exhaustion with the war? Above them, Thalira's silhouette moved closer to the observation barrier. Her luminescent patterns had shifted to soft blue, what he was learning to recognize as deep concern. "I'm here because someone has to build bridges," Elias said slowly, working through the thought as he spoke. The war could have gone on for decades. Millions more would have died on both sides. Someone had to take the risk of trusting an alien species enough to marry into their royal family. "Noble words," the Admiral replied. "But what about when the real tests come? When Earth and the Alari Dominion have conflicting interests? When you have to choose between your birth world and your adopted people? What happens to your pretty ideals then?" The chamber around them began to shift, showing glimpses of possible futures. Elias saw himself mediating trade disputes, negotiating military agreements, making decisions that would affect billions of lives across 2 species. Some futures showed him as a respected bridge between worlds. Others showed him as a man caught between conflicting loyalties, trusted by neither side. "I don't know," Elias said honestly. "I'll probably make mistakes. I'll definitely face situations where there's no perfect answer, but I'll face them trying to do right by both peoples. And Princess Thalira, what role does she play in your grand vision of interspecies cooperation?" That question stopped Elias cold. Throughout the trials, he'd focused on his responsibilities to Earth and the Dominion, but he'd barely considered his obligations to Thalira as an individual rather than a political entity. He began, then paused. "She's brilliant, strategic. She understood the necessity of this alliance before most of her own people did. She's taking as big a risk as I am, maybe bigger since she's the one who proposed it." "That's not what I asked." "She's my partner," Elias said, and realized as he spoke that he meant it. "Not just in marriage, but in everything this represents. She's the person I need to work with to make this succeed. The person I need to trust and who needs to trust me." The Admiral smiled, not mockingly, but with genuine approval. "And personally? What do you feel for her as a person, not a political ally?" Elias thought of their conversations during the preliminary meetings, Thalira's dry humor when dealing with pompous diplomats, the way her neural patterns dimmed when she spoke of Alari casualties, her obvious intelligence and equally obvious loneliness. "I care about her," he said simply. "I want her to succeed. I want her to be happy. I want to be worthy of the trust she's placed in me." The Admiral nodded once and began to fade. Then perhaps you'll survive this after all. The chamber returned to its original organic curves, the bioluminescent walls pulsing with warm light. Above, the observation barrier became transparent, revealing Thalira looking down at him. Her luminescent patterns had shifted to bright silver, surprise and something that might have been hope. A door opened in the chamber wall as the first light of dawn filtered through the ship's viewport. Elder Cathera entered carrying the same crystalline device from the night before. "It is finished," she announced. "Captain Ward has completed the first night trial." Thalira descended through a hidden passage, moving quickly to stand before Elias. Her opalescent eyes searched his face as if looking for some fundamental change. "How do you feel?" she asked quietly. "Different," Elias admitted. "Like I understand. Something I didn't before. About your people, about responsibility, about what this marriage really means." "And what does it mean?" "It means we're partners, in everything. It means I need to be worthy not just of a political alliance, but of your trust as a person." Thalira's luminescent patterns brightened to warm gold. When she extended her hand, palm up, the tattoos there glowed with soft light. This time, when Elias placed his palm against hers, the warmth that spread up his arm felt like acceptance. "Then we begin," she said. "Together." Outside the viewport, both Earth and the Alari homeworld were visible, two worlds now bound by more than treaty. They were bound by the promise of two people willing to build something new between the stars.